Florida State is doing better on the recruiting trail than many expected, yours truly included. But now I'm going to explain to you why.
You are Locked On Seminoles, your daily podcast on the Florida State Seminoles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Seminoles. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst and writer. Thank you for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. Today's show is going to discuss the recruiting fortunes of the Florida State Seminoles. I'm coming off not one, not two, but three different Under Armour camps with some intel on key players like Isaiah Williams, Cameron Wilson, and so many other players. We're going to get a little bit more of a perspective on just where they're at, as well as look at the recruiting visits coming up in March and through the official visit schedule. And to make it even sweeter, at the end of the show, more about the ACC settlement. It's going to help recruiting. I'm going to define a little bit of that too, because I have some pretty good ideas on where that money is going. So let's start with the recruiting buzz for Florida State. This is really fun. I'll be the first to admit, hand raised for those of you not watching on YouTube, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple or wherever you get your pods, I thought Florida State was really going to struggle out of the gate in recruiting. Why would I not think that? They're coming off a 2-10 season. But they've done a really good job considering what happened last year. They've gotten 7 commitments. They've gotten several more players on campus than I thought they would, several more elite players. But that's just a general analysis. Here's the key. There is nothing like a face-to-face interview. And I'm going to start off with one of the best players, not only in Florida, but the United States in regards to what's going on with recruiting, and that's Jordan Campbell. He's the linebacker out of Carroll City in South Florida, Miami Public League kid. I didn't think Florida State had much, if any, chance of getting him. He's been committed to Miami for the better part of 2 years. Why would he look to switch? Why would he even consider Florida State? Well, I had a chance to talk to him, and quite frankly, there were a lot of different points in the conversation that I was shocked, but the biggest thing with him was how he said everybody on Florida State staff is involved. Now, keynote here. Not one, not two, but 3 different coaches on Florida State staff have South Florida ties. Evan Cooper just came over from Nebraska. You got Sertan, obviously a South Florida guy, but you also have Tim Harris Jr. And he said Tim was a guy that was involved as well. And the whole staff, defense coordinator, Coach White, etc., all were involved in that. Yes, includes Mike Norvell. And he just liked the love and the attention that he's getting. And I thought it was interesting because I didn't know they were in on him like that. I figured it was 1 or 2 guys. They just wanted to stay in his ear. I was dead wrong. Florida State has done a good job. I will be shocked if they don't get an OB. He's going to unofficially visit this spring. I don't think he gave me a specific date, maybe the 20th. It might have been Legacy Weekend. But whatever it is, he's going to visit this month. And he's probably a guy that I would put number 2 right now. I'll still give Miami the edge because it's the local school. He's been committed. But I think Florida State is right there in line. And this is an old-fashioned Miami versus Florida State recruiting battle. Haven't had that many of them in the last few years that were really for elite players because it's usually, quite frankly, an out-of-state SEC school or Ohio State. Maybe it's Michigan. Maybe it's Notre Dame. There's somebody out of state that's involved with Florida State. There's a million different examples, but not that the Florida State Seminoles and the Miami Hurricanes don't battle. They do. But there just aren't as many as what I was accustomed to when I was growing up. So this is cool for me. As for his timeline, he doesn't really have one. It was interesting because Jordan said that really all the schools other than Miami are, in his own words, kind of new to him. He said that 2 or 3 times when a few of us were interviewing him at Miami Under Armour. And I thought that was interesting because I know he's familiar with UF and Florida State, but there have been massive coaching changes on both staffs over the last year or so. Plus, again, he's been going to Miami for quite a while. It's just interesting that some of the coaches involved now with FSU, they had already developed a relationship with some of the coaches in South Florida because they've known them for years. Some they grew up with because they're from there. So that's a little bit of an edge for the Noles. I'm not saying Florida doesn't have a shot. They're really trying, by the way, the Florida Gators are, to get involved, but I don't know if they really have a shot or not. And I'm not saying that based on my own confidence level one way or the other, just going by what Jordan said. He's starting to get to learn that staff. They're kind of an asterisk, if you will, at this point. But he does know Florida State's well, And again, if you take nothing else away from this, because it's what I took from the interview, and I was standing there with Jordan in South Florida when I was interviewing him, it's that they've just put in the effort. I think that's the biggest thing that Florida State was missing with the last coaching staff. Sometimes it's just about relationship building and really trying to get to know a young man and his family and his coaches. It is about time, and more time. Either you want to do it or you don't. Florida State didn't have enough coaches on their staff over the last 3 to 5 years, whatever level you want to put it at. It was subpar in some way, shape, or form. And this new staff has a new level of effort. And Jordan Campbell is an elite linebacker. Like, Jordan Campbell is a kid that can go to any school in the country. He just happened to commit to the U early, but that hasn't stopped everybody from coming out. Like, if he picked up the phone and called Michigan or Oregon or Texas or Notre Dame or wherever, they're going to take that phone call. This is a big-time player, possibly a top 100 guy. I know linebackers aren't as coveted as they used to be, but this kid can be a pass rusher on certain downs. You can play him at either inside spot, whatever you want to do. And here's the final piece of information on him. I love kids like Jordan because he's got all the accolades. He doesn't really need to do interviews, and he went out of his way to answer every single question. Guys like that are great for your program, obviously great for guys like me that interview kids, but they can also be the face of your program for social media reasons, for post-game interviews after games, etc. That only raises his stock more. So I like to see Florida State involved with kids like him. Also, just going to go down a list of kids here that I've got notes on from one way, shape, or form or another. I just wanted to start with Jordan Campbell because he's such a good guy, and I think he deserves it. But Isaiah Williams, a kid that I'd seen at Under Armour in Orlando. Right now, I think Florida State, if I had to pick, that would be the school they were going to get him. He's a top 100 kind of guy as well, pass rusher, big athletic kid. He might end up breaking 4.5 in the 40 before all that long, and he's 215 pounds. This is a pure athlete from just north of Orlando and Tavares. Florida State has had him committed once. Maybe they can get him back. He's really, really talented. They've got Bo Bentley coming in for a visit. That's one of the best quarterbacks from the state of Texas. He's a kid that helped lead Salina to a state title last year in his first year starting, had over 40 touchdowns, over 5,000 total yards, just a phenomenal athlete. And he does, before anybody asks, fit Gus Malzahn's offense. Just as an example, Landon Duckworth, kid from Jackson, Alabama, another kid that fits. They're going to get him on campus this spring. This is a little bit further ahead than I thought they would be, especially quarterback recruiting, because it's hard. Quarterback recruiting, there's so many different things that go into it. They're still involved with Keyshawn Henderson. I'll be curious to see who all ends up finalizing OBs, but they're ahead of arguably the most important spot in sport. I mean, in my opinion, quarterback is that spot. Dorian Barney, Carrollton. Remember now, Florida State signed not one, but two players from Carrollton High School last year. Well, Dorian Barney's just set a no beat. Saw that on 24/7 Noles, so shout out to them. Really good to see Florida State hitting the well again. I love it when they go back to great programs. Carrollton's one of the best programs in the country. They have multiple kids every single year go to the P4 level. Juju Lewis was one of the kids last year, the quarterback that signed with Dion out there at Colorado. But they've got a lot of kids coming out of there. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and go back. Why not? They're really good. In Florida State, that's the one spot, by the way, DB, where Florida State has continued. Even when they were down, they hit the home run with DB recruiting. So to that point, I was told right now, Chauncey Ken, Georgia, and Florida State, depending on who you talk to, Florida State can get that kid. The key here, he wants to see what Florida State does this next fall. Can't blame him for that. He might be the best corner in the country. He's out of Booker High School in Sarasota. Grew up following Florida State. He's got connections to Florida State, your family. I will be shocked if Florida State is not at least in it until the end. Did you really think Florida State was going to have a shot with arguably the best corner in the country? It's, even though they got DBs and even though they got Surtain and Coach Coop, etc., number one guys after a 2-10 season, that's a little iffy. Congrats to Florida State for putting themselves in this position. Again, relationships, time, and more time. You got to put in time to make those relationships work. And Florida State's done a great job with him. A little more intel here. I'd heard about Cameron Wilson, the edge rusher out of Southridge High School in Miami, Florida, another public school kid. This is a really interesting story. I'm partial to this, as I've stated many times on this show, because he reminds me of some of the kids that Bowden used to recruit in my era. I'm 51 years old. This is the kind of kid that Bobby would have loved. 6'4", 210, definitely needs to add weight, definitely needs to add strength, definitely not ready yet for technique, going to need a redshirt year. But I'm telling you, this is a kid after 1 year is going to have a chance to play. He has the athleticism and he has the ability with his long limbs, and he's got really long arms. I don't know what his wingspan is, but it's impressive. If I was to guess, it's 6'6" or 6'7", so really long arms. And this is a kid's just yes sir, no sir. Another guy in front of the camera that was great. Cal's got a visit. Syracuse has got a visit. Florida State, he's got a wide variety of schools coming after him. Watch out for Syracuse. They're doing a great job. But Florida State's in on him too before Florida or Miami. I bet you at least one of the Gators and the Canes end up recruiting him. Cameron had 20 sacks last year in the Miami Public League. Look, I don't need a whole lot of help on that. As soon as I was given that statistic, I was good. There's a lot of things you can like about Florida State football recruiting, but getting pass rushers out of the Miami Public League definitely goes towards the top of the board. Speaking of which, when we come back, we're going to talk about some more recruits that give Florida State a little bit of a head of a curve kind of look at things coming off a terrible season. That's next here on Locked On Seminoles as we roll on. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. So Florida State is doing well in South Florida. They're getting some buzz with several kids in and out of the state. It's been an uptick. So I just want to continue on with some of the players that I've spoken with, as well as some intel I picked up from other people in the recruiting industry before we go into the fun stuff about how we're going to spend some of that money that the ACC is finally going to fork over. That's coming up next here in a few minutes. I spoke about Chauncey Kinnon and I spoke about Isaiah Williams, etc. A kid that I was impressed with, first off, just on how he played, Xavier Larise, the defensive back. He could probably play a half dozen different positions out of O'Galley High School in Melbourne. He committed to Oregon recently. Let's see if he still visits Florida State. I know the Noles is going to continue to recruit him. Again, think about the defensive staff for Florida State. They got some dogs on the recruiting trail. This is a big-time DB. Florida State cannot continue to lose kids to the Oregons and Ohio States of the world if they're going to get back on top. This is a key recruitment. I know that some place him at safety, some place him at corner. Let me just tell you this. He can cover, he has makeup speed, and he's got tremendous hand-eye coordination. Just get him on campus. Just get him on campus. If you don't get him after he takes an OB, so be it. But you got to get him on campus for the OB. They technically have one set. Let's see if that continues. But that's a great football player, and I loved him at Under Armour. I really think they got a shot there. I saw Trey Bell. Just want to bring this up. I can see why Florida State went after him. He's out of Barbara Goldman High School in the Miami area. He can change speeds, change directions. He's got pretty good timing with his hands to knock away the ball. He's an aggressive guy. Now the curious part about all of this, it's like with any other Florida State commitment, can they keep him in the fold? So far, they've done it, and there's going to be a lot of schools based on what I saw at Under Armour still come after him. But again, Surtain, Coach Coop, etc., I'm a little more confident about those guys than I am at some of the other spots because Florida State's had so much success, not only historically, but here recently at the defensive back position. To that point, Tadarius Hughes, I remembered him from seeing him in Battle Miami a few months ago, but I hadn't realized just how athletically gifted he was until I saw him back on the field again in one-on-ones. The kid can really change directions. Many think he's going to play free safety, and I think that's probably his best spot. Tadarius Hughes committed to the Noles. He's a kid that just transferred to Miami Northwestern, defensive back. I think he could possibly play corner. It's not out of the question. Just as an example, like Ezra Thomas, that's a kid that played some safety in high school, ended up playing corner at FSU. You just got to work it out after you get him on campus and figure those things out one by one. But man, can he move. If you get kids like this, Florida State can be back in that conversation for DBU. The upside for both Tadarius, Trey Bell, and quite honestly, a whole bunch of the kids they're recruiting. It's another elite group of DBs in the state of Florida, by the way. Just a nice little side note there. Florida State has a chance at an elite class. Again, by the way, Chauncey Kennan, Georgia, Florida State, that's a great battle, but the Noles should have a great edge there if they have a good season. Finally, just kind of looking at the list overall, looking at the OVs, I want to just talk about a few of the kids that got set up, explain why I think they have a shot, some things they still have to do. That's right now. But keep in mind, this is March. Follow the visits for the unofficial visits. I say this all the time on the show before I announce any of these kids. If you see them come in, they're getting listed, they're going to come, but do they show up? Follow the visits, because those will lead to the unofficial or the official visits that are going to happen later on this spring, May, and then, of course, in the month of June. The dead period, I believe, is like the last weekend of June, and you'll see a plethora of commitments all around the country at that time. So let's get started with the first weekends, May 30th. This is an interesting kid. He's blown up. Ebenezer Iwatabe, he's a defensive end out of Garner, North Carolina, plays at South Garner, Bama, Georgia, Notre Dame, Florida State. Everybody's all of a sudden in on him. Really twitchy kid, but raw. This, again, is similar to what Florida State recruited in the 70s, 80s, and 90s when they were building their dynasty. Can they get kids like this on campus all the time, especially like it's a bonus? They get a kid like that out of North Carolina to visit? That's ahead of schedule. Did I expect them to battle with the Irish and Bama, et cetera, right now? Not necessarily, but they're getting everybody on campus that they really want. That's a great start to your recruiting class. Jaron Yulee, Cardinal Newman. I don't know what it is about that program down in South Florida. He's a Palm Beach kid, but Florida State always seems to have an in there, so can recruit South Florida well in that area. Actually ran into him at one of the high schools in that area a couple of years ago. That's a program that Florida State has success with, and that's a kid that can play multiple spots. Probably a DB, but he could play receiver or running back too. He's just a good athlete. I'm not really sure, but with Florida kids, that's all right. Take as many of the athletes as you can possibly get, figure out where they're going to play a little bit later. The other kid, and I saw him in Under Armour too, DJ Forkpa, he's at IMG Academy, one of the most respectful kids you'll ever meet, and it's a good thing he's got a good personality. Holy cow, is that kid put together. He looks like a professional boxer. Upper body, biceps, chest, shoulders, his traps, everything. It's like, holy cow. He's a sub 4.6 kid on a bad day. He can run sub 4.5. Based on what I heard, he's around 220 pounds. That's not a normal inside linebacker. Again, he's at IMG Academy. DJ Forkpa, just a freakish athlete. He's still learning football, and who knows exactly how he'll be used at IMG and the college level, but a thumper. That's a kid Florida State's got coming in for an OV, really, really talented player. A kid that I didn't know Florida State had coming for a visit, Madden Williams, another guy that could play on either side of the ball, probably play running back, play receiver, play safety, whatever. St. John Bosco, one of my favorite programs in the country. He's committed to A&M, but this just shows the depth that Florida State has in their recruiting efforts. California kid, St. John Bosco is just on the edge of Los Angeles. It's in Bellflower, California. That is a great sign. It's a Trinity League program. It's a handful of private schools out there. I believe it's 6. It's just elite high school football. Everybody that plays in that league's got a shot to play some kind of college ball for the most part if you're starting. And Florida State, coming off a 2-10 season, still has that kid visiting. Did I really expect that? No. Again, that kind of just certifies what I said to lead into the show. Florida State is ahead of the curve for what I expected. As far as a pure surprise to me, because I didn't know Florida State really had any shot, Carson Baker, Langston Hughes, one of the fastest running backs in the country. Langston Hughes, of course, just on the edge of Atlanta, just a little bit southwest of the city of Fairburn, excuse me. That kid is coveted by Georgia among many other schools. He's coming in for an official visit. That's a great sign. Florida State also has Caden Hall. By the way, that you could argue this is the biggest Florida State battle in the state. I heard about him a little bit last week before the Under Armour event. And he's out of Milton. It's just on the edge of Pensacola. His film is ridiculous. He's so technically sound for a guy that, quite honestly, not enough people talk about. But for some reason, 24/7's only got him as a 3-star right now. I doubt that lasts. Caden Hall's film is just ridiculous. Florida State battle. Watch out for the Noles. He's got ties to both programs in some way, shape, or form based on distance, family, etc. But it's probably going to be one of those two. A lot of people thought he was going to commit to Florida, though. And then Florida State started climbing. Part of that's probably Coach Coop and Coach Sertan doing a good job. But again, as a staff, Florida State has done a good job with several of these kids. Moving on, just going to use an example of finding a way to get another kid out of state on campus. Xavion Currents, I had a chance to interview him last year. He's out of Rock Hill, South Carolina, South Point. Really good football player, can play a role as a nickel, a free safety, a strong safety, could probably play receiver. He's technically committed to South Carolina, but he's going to visit the Noles as well. And then finally, just one more out-of-state kid, just to put it in perspective. They're still set up for a visit with Lamar Brown, maybe the best offensive lineman in the country. And he's at a university lab in Baton Rouge. I know there's several other kids I could mention, but I want to keep this podcast to about 30 minutes, so I won't go overboard too much here. But Florida State's really doing a great job. In-state, out-of-state, bringing in kids. And they're coming off a 2-10 year. At this point, that's all I can ask. Tomorrow, I'll talk about this a little bit more. Going to do something in regards to a podcast with a little bit of recruiting, some overview, and talk. I'm going to probably do a live show. Let's just go ahead and say that now. 8 p.m. Thursday night, live show, Locked On Seminoles. Again, 8 p.m. Thursday, we're going to do a Locked On Seminoles live show. We'll talk recruiting, talk ACC and all that. And to that final point, let's talk ACC next here on Locked On Seminoles. How would you spend the money? If it was up to you, how would you utilize the influx of cash? I'm going to guess it's going to be averaging out around $20 million a year, at least to start, based on the new TV deal. That is next here on Locked On Seminoles. There's nothing quite like having the thrill of spending extra money that you didn't expect to have. It's kind of fun. Not going to lie. It's kind of fun. These are the 5 things that I would utilize. And you can take it any way you want because it's up to you. This is just my take on some of the things that I would do if I was the Florida State administration. Some of them I guarantee you they'll do. The order of it, the importance of it, how they adjust it from year to year, those are variances you can only find out as going through it because certain people leave the program that you didn't expect, etc. But these are my overviews. Number 1, make official visits more high-end. What do I mean by that? Georgia, a few years ago, spent around $4 million on recruiting. Part of it's the hotels, the parent transportation, making sure that people that come with them in any way, shape, or form, they get what they want, they're happy. For instance, somebody that is a 6'7", 310-pound offensive tackle may seem like a big, mean guy, but his 8-year-old daughter or sister comes with him on the visit. If you treat her good, go out of your way to get to know her name, be nice to her, of course, the mom and the dad and everybody else, that's fine. But siblings, that's a big deal. Make sure that she gets to see what it's like to be in a sports car. Get with her and find something that she wants to do on Florida State's campus. It sounds small, but do you really think that any of these elite programs, Texas, Georgia, Ohio State, anybody, pick one you want, do you really think they spend this money just because they're nice? They want the kid to sign. Florida State's going to have a lot more money now. I'm going to guess at least $500K a year, conservatively, of that $20 million is just going to be used on visits, maybe even $1 million, because that is the way you get over the top. You're in so many of these competitive battles. Chauncey Kinnon, like I was talking about earlier in the show. If you want to win that battle, maybe there's something you can do during his OVE when he takes it this summer. I'm not sure exactly how that'll work out, but again, you have an opportunity when they come on campus. Maybe it's the kid's sister, maybe it's his girlfriend, maybe it's somebody on his coaching staff. You give them an experience that they don't forget, and then it helps you down the line when National Signing Day comes around in early December. Number 2, this is a fun one too. You have the money, sign more academic advisors, more financial advisors, people to help them with NIL. After you pay them, hey, this guy knows what he's doing. He can take your $20 and turn it into $100. Make sure you use this guy. We've set you up here. Go ahead and do it. That's just a couple of the examples. Here are a few more. Make sure that you go out and you find the right NIL advisor. Make sure you go out and find a way to invest the money that you have now to not only set yourself up for the future, but your future in terms of your entire family, your linear family line, your kids, your grandkids, all these things. This is what a Florida State degree can do. You've got the money to hire more people to set all this up in an infinite way. It doesn't sound like much, but a couple more people in the back office that are making $50K, $75K a year could be the difference besides getting or not getting, not just Chauncey Kinnon, but a bunch of elite guys all around the country. And if you don't, guess what? You're going to have a hard time signing a lot of people. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can hire people to make it work. But as I mentioned a few minutes ago, you also need money to replace people. Just want to bring that up. That's not fun, but no matter how good you are or how bad you are, coaches and administrators leave in your football program. Having this extra money, you need to have cash set aside too with this. No doubt, to replace people. Never forget that. When somebody leaves, don't be surprised. Have a list ready, and go out and spend money on the best people to get them to Florida State. Number 3, more personnel for travel and for families. I kind of talked about that a little bit, but let me be more specific. When you go on road trips, this is a complaint that I got for a long time in the 90s and early 2000s. Parents didn't have money to go. Like at Florida, I remember Florida State played SC, home and away. It's like 98 or something like that, 97, 98, whatever it was. Do you really think everybody's just got money to fly to LA? Well, now with NIL, that's changed, but you can still increase the experience. Have people in the back office for the travel, just for the parents, just for the people that want to go, like the coaches from that kid's high school. Maybe he's, Miami Northwestern coach, whatever it is. Find a way to help them in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just phone calls, staying in touch, giving them updates, what's going on with the players. There should be somebody that is in that role, not just talking about people that are interns and all that, but multiple people. And I'm sure Florida State has somebody, but it should expand. Whatever the number is, should expand. Okay, if it's 5 right now, it should be 10. Relationships are everything in recruiting. More high school relationships, more junior college relationships too. That's something I could put in to start of that now on the fly. Make sure you have all of that covered, because if you don't, you're going to miss out on somebody down the road. You never lose by being ahead of the game with communication. It's the number one thing with relationships with your family, with your job, and of course in recruiting. It is about relationships. Number 4, deeper scouting department. This is very specific. People that have been in the industry. The new trend now is getting somebody from the NFL to help with the GM spot, recruiting spot, just to put the roster together. You've got decisions about how many scholarships you're going to use because it's going up to 105 from 85. Are you going to use all of them right away? Are you going to save some of them? All these decisions. It's a lot of important things going on there, because just because you take more players doesn't mean they're going to stay. You got to weigh the balance of, okay, we're bringing in all these kids, but how many are going to wait? How many scholarships do you take? Do you take more defensive line? If I'm going to take a spot, that's certainly what I'd look at because it's so valuable. How do you evaluate that stuff? So your recruiting staff, you might want to expand it, and certainly, regardless of the number, high end. Do not want to go cheap anymore, regardless of who you are. But with $20 million more in your pocket a year, Florida State can certainly help. And finally, this is a fun one. Save money for an elite recruit. We talk about this all the time, NIL spending. You could be an NIL situation with a transfer portal guy too, but you get down to the end, you really need an offensive tackle, you really need a quarterback, whatever it is. $100,000 doesn't seem like a massive number in the NIL world, but it could be the difference between you getting a future first-round pick or watching your competitor, a rival like Miami or Clemson or Georgia, whatever, get that same player. Save some money back for specialty situations in recruiting where, you know what, we need this guy. Florida State in-house, I think, needs to look at that, find different ways to use their money to spend appropriately for the best players, especially in a crunch. You get down to the very end and it's that kid can't pick. Make it hard for him to say no because you've got the financial backing. Thank you once again for making Locked On Seminoles your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some Noles with me. It's been another fun episode today talking about recruiting and all the fun money they can spend from the ACC contract finally getting put into the place where it needs to be. Wardley knows it's long overdue. Thank you again for that. And please hit that like button, notification bell, and subscribe and share this podcast. We will see you again on Thursday.